Today's webinar is going to talk about AI and how you can use it in lease administration to make your life a little bit easier. We probably have about 30 to 45 minutes worth of talking to do. If you have to drop off at any point, that's okay. We will send a follow-up email with the presentation and the recording. So we'll get that to you if you've got to drop off. I will go ahead and kick it off now so that we can be out of here as quick as possible. My name is Jenny. I'm the Director of Product Marketing at LeaseCake, and I have Dave with me, who is our co-founder and Chief Product Officer, and he is whiz at all things AI, and everything we're going to talk about today is like his bread and butter, so I'm super excited to interview him. Today's format's going to be a little bit more of me asking him questions and him giving me some of his thoughts. So we actually did this about 6 months ago, I think, Dave, where we did another fireside chat when AI had first come out.
Yeah, feels like it was 3 years ago, but I think it was about 6 months ago.
Yeah, and things were pretty cutting edge then, but now I'm like, wow, that stuff was like so basic. So let's
Yeah.
talk about kind of where have we been in like 6 months?
Yeah, no, it's great. I think it's a good way to kick off. So it's a lot has happened in 6 months. It feels like you can't go a day without hearing something new. So what I want to do is try to summarize it into things that I think would be applicable to this conversation. And like four things came to mind. So the first one is, for anyone following like the big three or four, that's going to be Anthropic, OpenAI, going to be Gemini with Google. Musk has got his stuff coming out with Grok. It's a bit of an arms race, and they're fighting to have the newer, bigger models, and that's good. I think it's good news for everybody who's looking to build an application layer on top of it, like we are at LeaseCake. And so these newer, bigger models have a couple things I think that are very, very interesting. One is the context windows are getting really, really massive. And so for a little bit of background, what is a context window? So think of a context window as the amount of information that you can put in for a given prompt or a query. So if you're going to ask a question and you want the question to be about a piece of information that you want to provide, you have been historically limited by the size of the window. And so if you had, let's take a lease as an example. Historically, you'd have to cut the lease up into chunks, ask questions as individual questions, and then piece them all together behind the scenes. And it became a lot of work at the application layer to get a concise answer. And now that's starting to become less and less of an issue. So all that work you had to do 6 months ago is starting to change. These context windows are getting really, really big. They're almost like up to like 130, 128,000 tokens, which translates into like full novels and books, and which is going to be bigger than the majority of leases that are out there. So now we're getting into an area where we can put in the entire lease and ask questions instead of this having to cut it up into chunks and ask individual questions. So I think that's really, really big change and advancement over the last 6 months. I think it's going to help with efficiency, cost, because the costs are coming down. Fewer queries means less cost, and also accuracy, because trying to piece together things after the fact can become difficult and lead to problems. So that's the first thing. Second thing is reasoning. And think of reasoning with AI as a little different than the way that humans would do reasoning. But the practical way that reasoning is done with AI is, the example I'd like to use is let's say that first one is, let's say an answer comes back. It won't just give you the answer. It will ask itself, do I think this is the right answer? It's really, really neat technique. So it'll go back and do it, and then it might ask itself, okay, I see the question, here's an answer, have another part of the AI almost QA its own answer to determine whether it seems to be accurate or not. And this will help prevent things like hallucinations. My favorite hallucination story is the one from almost a year ago now, where the lawyer got a little bit lazy, went to ChatGPT, asked for some precedent decisions in his state, and the AI came back and just very confidently spit out a whole bunch of stuff that was completely false. It just
Mm.
made it up. And that's a great example of hallucination. And it was back then, it was a bit of a Kruger nightmare, but not Freddy Krueger, more Dunning-Kruger. This answer came back with a high amount of certainty, and it was completely wrong. Well, reasoning helps prevent that. It creates a way to where the AI can check itself and make sure that it's staying on topic, on context, and using the right information. The second thing I think is really important here, and it will tie into one of the first things that we consider to be very, very transformative in lease administration, is it can follow a thread. So let's say you ask the question about, hey, tell me about my exclusive, any exclusives from any other tenants in the particular building. It might come back in there, and historically it might say, oh, exclusives related to other tenants can be found in Appendix J, and that's your answer. Well, that's really not the answer you want. That's technically the answer, but the answer is really in Appendix J. So what reasoning can do is say, oh, I see there was a mention of Appendix J. Let me go to Appendix J, get the answer, and then bring it back as part of a holistic answer. And that is amazing because now you don't have to have these follow-up questions going, okay, now ask another question for Appendix J. So newer, bigger models, I think, is probably one of the biggest things. The second one, it bleeds over into agents. So think of agents as these autonomous or semi-autonomous little snippets of code that will kind of jump into action when certain things happen. So in lease administration, one that we'll actually talk about throughout here is, let's say that you had a renewal coming up. If a renewal is coming up, what we can do is we can disperse an agent to now go do a series of actions like, oh, go figure out the name of the landlord, go figure out the address it needs to be sent to, go figure out if there's anything in the lease that is a little odd as it pertains to this. Go figure out these details, but always do it anytime a lease is coming up. So you can have these very purposeful snippets of code that are like AI agents that'll go do and perform tasks when you need them and come back and bring details to you. And so I think that's going to be something we'll be looking to employ here. And that's something else that's happened a lot. You've seen a lot more over the last 6 months. A third one is voice interaction. This will play a big part in later in this when we talk about how it's transforming the way you interact with data. But just as a, as an anecdote here, anybody who's got the paid version of ChatGPT, I know it has it. I don't know if the free versions do or not, but anybody who hasn't had a chance to try the voice interaction with ChatGPT, I find it absolutely fascinating and amazing. And I think it's a real game changer. Again, just as a small anecdote, I bring it up we use it at night with my daughters. I have an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. They're in first grade and they're in second grade. And I'm embarrassed to say I have a hard time keeping up with their homework. The way that things are described using different language than I remember when I was that age, or probably don't remember at all. So I have to ask all the time, what is an irregular word? Like I couldn't even remember what that is. What is like the Common Core math stuff? Or they're teaching it a little bit different. So I'm embarrassed. I feel bad because I really want to help my kids. Well, I bring my iPad, I'll turn on ChatGPT, I will have it join us as a conversation, and she will talk amongst us as we talk to her. I will ask a question, she will respond with an answer. My daughter may speak up because she has a question. The AI understands that someone else is speaking. It stops speaking, starts listening to my daughter, and then will answer my daughter and come back and answer me. It's amazing. And so I think that that little interaction there, we can start to look at how can we create a similar experience with how you interact with more business related data. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. And then lastly, before we get into the three big transformative things in AI is the continued investment. So you may have seen this. The first one that's been in the news a lot is Microsoft's looking to invest $80 billion this year, this fiscal year 2025. They're looking to invest $80 billion purely in AI data centers to build models, deploy agents, deploy AI throughout their ecosystem, and to move it throughout the world. I mean, they are tripling, quadrupling down on AI. It's such a huge thing for them. And the other one I think is just ridiculously crazy is if you go back about 25, 26 months ago, NVIDIA was a $300 billion market cap company. Still impressive by most measures. But in 25 months, they've gone from a $300 billion market cap company to, as of yesterday, about a $3.52 trillion company, second only to Apple. That's in just a little over 2 years. It's absolutely astronomical what they have done. And because they are the epicenter of AI, they are the ones currently building the most powerful, the most coveted chips in the industry. So these are things, Jenny, are the six big things that I think are really, really important as we get into the next part of this conversation around what do we think are going to be the three most transformative areas of AI as it relates to lease admin.
Yeah, I think too, just about like I had the newest iPhone and we were promised Siri, like the new AI like the talk series on here still hasn't released, but everyone's trying to capitalize on like, this is where AI is going, and I promise we're going to get there. And yeah, I feel like voice interaction is going to get crazy soon. I have not tried the Chat GPT homework assist like you're talking about. I'll have to try.
Oh, it's amazing. Hey, after this, I'll show you what I'm talking about if you're interested. It's really, really cool. Really, really cool.
All
Uh,
right, so let's get into our three things today. It looks like we're going to start with abstraction. So what are we talking about? Lease abstraction, contract abstraction?
yeah. I mean, one in the same. We're going to talk about leases specifically, but everything I'm talking about as relates to leases, you could is true for any type of contract. But obviously, for us, we're called Lease Cake. We focus on leases, but we do this for leases as well as contracts. Yes, I absolutely want to start with abstraction. It may not be the most awesome thing in the world to talk about, but it is really, really powerful what's actually happening. So if you think about abstraction historically, you're taking this big, long lease, 30, 40, 50, 60 pages. And by nature, abstraction means let's go summarize this into something that's a little more digestible. And that's wonderful. That's great. And you're thinking dates and dollars and key points that you want to bring out of here. But the reality is that what we find is there is so much information in here that if you purely just go through the summarization techniques, which you have to do, don't get me wrong, everything I'm about to say is in supplement to that, is you're missing on all of the details related to areas that can be highly just full of risk. And this is just a handful. This is me just brain dumping yesterday when I was putting the slide together. There are so many other areas, but the method by which your rent is escalating, is it tied to CPI? Is it something that you can't even really plan for because you don't know what it's going to be? What are the operating expenses? Do you have caps? Are there no caps? Your maintenance responsibilities. You're aware of what you have to do and what you're not doing. What are you allowed to do? What are you not allowed to do, right? You're exclusive, other people's exclusive. Signage, personal guarantees, and the list goes on. You can see all of these have opportunities for you to have either favorable or really unfavorable terms in your particular leases. And what we think of is where a great opportunity for AI is not just going and summarizing the dates and dollars, but how can we use AI to pull out all of the relevant information for all of those topics and organize it? So this is an example of signage. I happened to pick it at random just because this was a good one because it had a bunch of different things on different pages here. But this is all the information related to signage within a contract. And it's not just an individual contract where you've got things that are on different pages, because that's another thing you have to be concerned about is not everything is always nicely cut up in one section. It's great when it is, because then you can just open the document, type in signage, and go to it. But what we find is the majority of times, this information is throughout the document. And if you're not careful, you may not have all the details necessary to make an informed decision. So one of the first things that AI seems to be really, really good at is given the context of signage and why there's the concern about signage, automatically rip through that document, go find all the relevant information and bring it back. So that's the first thing. And you can see that it can be on different pages as well. But the other part about it that I think is really, really useful is it can do it across different documents. So you may have a master lease, but then you might have 4 or 5 amendments, let's say. If you've got 4 or 5 different documents, it's painstaking to go through and put them in order. What AI does is you can go into a system like LeaseCake, you can put those documents in and it'll search through all the documents and piece all that information back together. So that way you can rest assured it's all together in one thing, and understanding where it's coming from. So this is the first thing I think where AI is going to be very, very transformative for lease administration. I think it's going to redefine what abstraction is from a very summarized version of dates and dollars with just a handful of pieces picked out now to we're going to go pull all this detail out and make it available for you. So I think
Yeah.
that's the first thing.
I think I definitely think that's a next level up for sure. Because I think when we first talked about AI, we were just saying like, oh, here's your rent and here's what your rent's going to be in 5 years. And it was, just these two simple numbers, which was helpful. But when we start talking about clauses, that's when it gets, a little bit more complicated. And I think that's a next level up for sure. Because I think when we first talked about AI, we were just saying like, oh, here's your rent and here's what your rent's going to be in 5 years. And it was, just these two simple numbers, which was helpful. But when we start talking about clauses, complicated, right? And when AI really helps. So all these colored bars, what are these each supposed to represent? Different risks to your business?
These are different types of clauses. Each one of them could have a particular risk associated with it. Like we have a client who's one of their very important things is by the nature of their business, they acquire a lot of companies and they may acquire companies in a close proximity. So part of their strategy is to maybe acquire a couple, move them together, and with the under expectation that they're going to pay rent for out, but they want to go dark in the one, they want to leave one alone and move and maybe consolidate into another. So it's very, very important that they have the right to go dark. And so before they acquire a particular location, they need to know that because it changes the way that they how they acquire and then do what they want to do. That's just one thing. Force majeure. I mean, this one can get scary as well. One of the things we've been doing, and we jump to the next one, you'll understand a little bit more what I'm saying, but we're running. Somebody asked a question about are we doing any of this now? And the answer is we're doing most of this now. We've got either some of it actually in production or we've got a beta going on for something we're about to talk about. But we started going through, we helped clients who have been impacted by the California wildfires. We're going through looking at their leases and we're analyzing the clauses that we believe are going to have an impact on how they are able to react to what's going on. We're finding, certain contracts where force majeure clause says, look, the place may get destroyed, but you're still on the hook for rent. It's just very, very clear. You're on
Crazy.
the hook for the rent. And so they may not know that. They may assume that, oh, but I can't pay rent. I'm not paying rent if I'm not in business, but contractually they have to pay the rent. So we're using this type of technology to go find this information for them and try to do what we can to help them in this time of need. So, and that'll make a little more sense here when we get to the next area of transformation that we think AI is going to really, really be impactful here.
Okay, so what do you mean by content generation?
So AI, you may have heard the term generative AI, and when you see it on the news, you're seeing things like pictures on social media where they're creating pictures and they may be used for good, they may be used for harm. You may be seeing some of these beautiful videos that were built by Sora where you can write in a script and it'll build you a movie. And those are all great examples of generative AI. But we think that there's opportunities to take what we just did in the first piece with abstraction. And what we're doing now is we're starting to generate content to supplement it. So when you start with this abstracted content, so like this signage thing here, there are three things that we're doing now for our customers as part of this a new product that we've been working on that we're currently betaing with about 40 customers. And we call it Risk Analyzer. And so what it does is it takes this information, and the first thing it does is summarizes it. So one of the things these AI is incredibly good at is taking a lot of text and then summarizing it. And if you've never done it, I highly recommend going and trying it. It's absolutely amazing. You can get it to give it back to you in just about any format you want. I've just asked for a bulleted list and I asked it to make sure that you do not have to be a real estate expert. Just give it to me to where anybody over the age of 15 could probably understand what's going on. Like you could ask the question that way such that it'll give you back an answer that's like that. So that's the first thing we're doing is we're summarizing this. And what this does is if you think of the first step of the abstraction is I don't have to open the document and find all the information. That's the first step. Now all the information's right here. The second step is I don't want to have to read through all this and try to understand it. Can you just simplify it for me? And so that's what the summarization is. So that's the first type of generated content that we've started to be doing. And we've been doing this for about 6, 7 months now for all of our customers. We auto summarize all clause contract language. The thing we just started doing here recently is we now are doing risk analysis. So we allow customers to be able to provide us with an explanation of what are their specific concerns. So let's say that you have a concern around other tenants having exclusives for things that you're looking to do later and expand your menu. Let's say that we had that one client is we really concerned that we need to have the right to go dark. We're willing to pay the rent, but we need to be able to go dark. It's very, very important to us. Every one of those things I showed can have a specific concern, whether it be general or very specific. And you can even put into the system what language you prefer to have in those contracts. And what we're able to do with that is auto analyze the abstracted content against your concerns and provide a risk analysis. And we'll score it for you. So we're creating the first version of a lease score where it's a favorability score. So in this example, it got a rating of a 2 because it was that far off from what the client's favorable language was. This one was more unfavorable for them. And so we can bring that level of awareness. And we can do this across all your contracts. So what's nice about it is by moving contracts through there, you get an individual contract favorability score across all your different concerns and even a weighted score for the contract overall. And then you can look at that across the portfolio. So you can do things like what's my favorability as it relates to exclusive across my portfolio or in the Southwest or for any leases over 5,000 square feet. It becomes another very, very useful data point in a sea of data points inside the system to be able to have that kind of awareness. And it's one thing to have the awareness, but the other thing is taking it one step further. We're also starting to generate guidance because we know what the concern is, and because we know what the reality is, and because we know what the risk analysis is saying, we can generate using AI language that helps improve the favorability. So you may not be able to go from a 2 to a 5, but we can provide you with details on how to possibly improve that. Now, this can become useful in two very, very common use cases. One, if you're about to execute a contract, you run it through Risk Analyzer, and we come back and say, hey, this is what you're hoping for. This is what you got. This is what you need to do to move your favorability score up. So it's really, really easy to understand. Don't execute the contract if you don't have to. Improve your favorability, and we can draw attention directly to the areas that require you to be aware of it. But the second thing is when you have a renewal coming up, what this allows us to do is through things like not only do you have a renewal coming up in 3 months from now, but here's a reminder, you've got 7 areas of unfavorability based upon your concerns. This might be a good opportunity for you to, should the conditions present themselves and the right leverage is there, you might want to move some of these into a more favorable status, and we can help you do that. Here's some language you might want to suggest that'll move you from a 2 to a 3 or from a 3 to a 4. So this is the second area we think AI is going to be highly transformative that we are spending a lot of time on right now is how do we take this abstracted data, how do we summarize it, analyze it, provide guidance, and really shine a light on the risk that's commonly buried in contracts that most customers don't realize is there.
Yeah, wow, this is really powerful. This is very, very cool. So explain to me, how does LeaseCake know what you want to see in your contracts? How does it know what's good or bad to you?
Yeah, so good question. So what we've been doing is working on a standard type of basic set of concerns from the perspective of a tenant. Like if you were a tenant, this is what would be considered favorable from exclusive versus unfavorable. But what we do is we work with customers and we provide them the ability to get that dialed in to where they can edit what those concerns are so they can be more tailored to their specific concerns. So not only can they take the 25 concern areas that we have out of the box, they can add to it by adding additional concerns that they want, but they can also edit the definition of those concerns. So we allow them to put in an explanation of why it matters to them. We provide the ability for them to give examples of favorable language. We even provide the ability to provide examples of unfavorable language. And that's what arms the AI with, okay, I know you're concerned about this. I understand what the concern is. I've been given examples of favorable language and I have examples of unfavorable language. And I have what I need now to go not only go find the relevant details, but also analyze it and tell you what I think you need to do to move the score up. And so that flow is what allows us to do that. But yeah, clients can go in and dial it into their own level. And that's what we expect to have happen over time. More mature organizations who know what they want. What's really nice about this is they can put exactly what they want into the system. Those who may not know what they want, they can start with our general one and get some benefit and maybe learn something along the way. So we're trying to help both sides.
Yeah, so would you be using this like to help speed up the legal review, or like at what point would you start bringing in your legal team with this type of product?
Usually to people who have well-established legal teams, where I think that this can be beneficial is providing a quick analysis to those in the real estate department so they have an idea of the things that they know need to be reviewed. And so what we imagine is that this may help with the time spent with legal teams. So legal teams, when they're given a flat document, they've got to go figure out and find all this stuff and do all that upfront work. Where we see this as being a nice supplement to that is we could help automatically do that work up front. And then it's almost as if a report package can be delivered to the legal team to say, here's where we're at. Can you help us move our favorability in the right area? Now, the legal team may look at the guidance thing and say, okay, that's great. That's exactly where I want to go. They might change the words. They're the professionals. But this allows someone to go from being unaware to an incredibly high level of awareness in minutes
Hmm.
without having to work with outside parties. So we think that this is going to be a good supplement to that. We don't imagine this completely replacing the need for legal. We think this is a supplement to actually help the teams have a lot more insight before they engage with legal.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, that's very cool.
All right, so we think this is, I mean, I think that this is the second biggest area of transformation that AI is going to have. And then we get into the third one.
Okay, so you say user interface. What does that mean to you?
So now I'm going to tie it back to my daughters a little bit here, you'll see. So as you can imagine, we were only talking about one lease, and we were talking about all these different types of things that are in there. And that was only a subset of it. And you think about all the data for each one of those individual areas that's in there. And then you think about 500,000, 3,000 leases, you have 30 leases. It's a massive amount of information. And so then the question becomes, how do you engage with it? How do you interact with it? Well, today, the traditional approach and the one you still see everywhere, and honestly, you see a lot of this in lease cake, and I think you'll see a lot of this for the foreseeable future because in many respects it works well for what it does. It's a very static type of interaction. You log in, you go to a report that you might have built, you scroll down, you find something. There might be a search box, but the search box helps you take you to a specific thing like, excuse me, take me to store 89, and then you scroll down to find a piece of information about store 89. You might have canned dashboards where you know that the chart's over here and there's a chart over here and there's some data underneath. And that's what we're used to, right? And in many cases it works. And then when you move between system to system, the basic concepts are the same, but some are intuitive, some are not intuitive. And so it becomes sometimes frustrating to get answers out of systems. And this is where I think AI is going to really, really change because when you bring AI in, one of the first things is it moves away from a lot of that static presentation of content and more into something that's more conversational. Whether it's typing or whether it's speaking, it's more of a, how can I help you today? Think of the AI as an assistant that's waiting to auto-generate content for you based upon the context of what you're looking to do. So I think that's the first thing you're going to see conversational engagement instead of a lot of scrolling and clicking. And what that'll turn into is on-demand answers. So being able to ask questions as simple as, what do I have coming up soon? It'll understand who you are. It understands the notion of coming up soon. It understands the nuance in there that you're looking for things that you should be concerned about. And that's another area AI is going to be really impactful for is it doesn't have to be the old days of writing prompts that are absolutely super specific. AI allows to read between the lines, understand the context of what you're doing, respond with an answer. And if it misunderstands, you just restate and go, oh, no, no, I meant this. And then it goes back and finds another answer. So I think this type of interaction is what you're going to start to see. And these on-demand answers that come back really, really quick. And I think that the other thing this is going to change is what device do you typically use? So when you're in the traditional approach, static information, pages of information, static interaction, page of canned dashboards, bigger screens are a requirement. Some applications can get pretty well on phones. We do our best to try to make the experience good, but let's be realistic. If you're looking at a 25 column table-based view, it doesn't look good on a small phone. You need at least an iPad. If you're going to look at dashboards, dashboards are typically big and wide and contain a bunch of information. They have their purpose and they need bigger screens. What's cool about, in my opinion, what's cool about the conversational experience, your phone is your natural thing, right? I still have a hard time talking to Siri on my laptop. It's normal for me to do it on my phone, but it's odd on my laptop. Why? Because I just think of my laptop as a different type of device. It's got a big, huge keyboard. It's got a big, huge screen. I think of this as my primary method. But when I pull my phone out, I don't think that way. I don't want to thumb. I just want to talk. So I think this is going to be an area that changes the way you get information out of a large system of thousands of data points, millions of data points like LeaseCake is. I just want to ask a question. What's coming up soon? So you got an upcoming renewal deadline on Store 89, and it's on February 28th, 2025. So I think that's the second area here about on-demand answers. And then lastly, when we combine these things together and we talk about AI agents and we talk about the CakeBot risk analyzer stuff from the previous section and the generative nature of content, what we can do is take it one step further. Instead of just reminding somebody they have something coming up, we can actually give them some actionable insights. So not only do I have something coming up on February 28th, but it's a great opportunity for the system to tell me, hey, by the way, you have 4 risk concerns with low favorability scores on Store 89. This might be a good opportunity to revisit those because when you're negotiating, if the timing is right, I might be able to get more favorable terms and remove some risk. And maybe just click here to find out how, and that dives into the guidance area. This is the current wording. If you can get the wording to here, your favorability score will go up. One of the things we believe is true is that we think that there's a great opportunity with the stuff that we just showed here and that we're working on, that you can think about renewals as opportunities to remove risk from your business. So we start thinking about renew the location, don't renew the risk. And it's easier to do that when you're aware of it. So when I think of the third thing where AI is going to be really transformative, I think it's in how we engage with our data and how that data can be brought back to us in a way that's far more actionable and not just returning answers from a query.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Well, those were our 3 topics. So we went through changes in abstraction, going from dates and dollars to more risk-centered, like clauses that we can start abstracting and interpreting them. We talked about generating content with those risk scores, with ideas of how can you move your favorability up in your leases, and then the user interface, just going from static words or pictures of charts to more conversational elements.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there was a question earlier about how much of this are we doing today versus tomorrow? If I work backwards, the interface stuff, we're working, we're prototyping, we're looking at different ways of changing the way you search in LeaseCake to be more CakeBot forward instead of let me jump to a report or jump to this. We're looking to move CakeBot there. So it's an AI layer that tries to understand what you're trying to get at and either auto takes you somewhere or just retrieves the information. We're still prototyping that a bit. We work back to the risk analysis. We're actively testing that out with customers right now. We're even open to doing it with non-customers as part of a beta. So if anybody here is interested in that, they want a lease or two to run through it, they're willing to jump on a call with me. I'm happy to show it to you, happy to create you an account. You can take a look at it, put it through its paces. All I ask for is some feedback and just let me know what you like and what you don't like. And then on the abstraction stuff, we're doing the majority of that today. With the work in stage 2, where we're auto creating the clauses on demand, that part will replace our current abstraction. But today, what the abstraction does is it will read through the documents, bring the details back, show it to you for the human still looks to approve it. But we imagine that will go away with the work that we're doing in step 2 here. So I'd say the majority of the things we talked about today, we're actively doing today, and the rest we're actively working.
Do you know anyone else who's doing this in lease administration right now?
Well, on the abstraction front, there's lots of firms that are using AI, whether it be the old method of machine learning, where they did a lot of regex expressions and a lot of putting sample sets through there, which has shown like Leverton did that a long time ago, and that was their primary method. They've probably expanded that to use emerging technologies, and anybody who's used that knows that it still requires a significant amount of human involvement to check and spot check and stuff like that. So I think that there's a lot of people are trying to do that. We're trying to do a portion of that, but most likely there's going to be other organizations that are just going to double down on just doing the abstraction and getting details out of documents into data. And we will most likely do a little bit of that, but for wider implementations, we'll probably look to to partner. So yes, I think there's a good amount of companies that are looking to solve the abstraction problem. On the generated content one, I haven't seen, personally haven't seen a lot of others do that. I think we're taking a bit of a novel approach to move beyond just storing and presenting and charting and graphing into generating content to be supplemental to the content coming out of the contracts. We'll see if that still remains to be true, but from what I can tell, we're definitely looking to be on the forefront of that. And also because our customers are asking for it. They're asking for it in different ways. When we ask them what worries them the most, it's the things they don't know. And this is a way for us to try to help that. And then on the UI piece, I think this industry will continue to be a bit of a laggard. I think you'll start to see this experience show up in other maybe consumer facing applications, but what works there will be brought here. What I can assure you is I'm working on it because I'd love to bring it into LeaseCake because I think it's a great use case. So I'm not sure if that answered your question or not, or went too
Yeah,
far. Okay.
that's good. And that's actually a great time to go into questions right now. If anyone on the call right now has questions about what we're doing, how to use it, any of like, I don't know, the fine print or the security that goes around this, we're happy to answer any questions. We have one that came through already, Dave, and I'm thinking it's talking about the analyzing your leases and giving you a score. But maybe it's about abstraction, Mike, if there's a difference, but it's basically asking how can it take in the additional like amendments and changes, especially if those documents are in multiple places or they're very far out in the future? How can it know if you're still going to be impacted by those things?
So the way that we think about amendments is think of it as very similar to you were going and let's say your initial favorability score is a 2 and you're going through a renewal as an example. If you're going through a renewal and you're able to renegotiate some of that, it means you're going to get a change to the contract. Whether the whole lease is rewritten or whether an amendment is happening, what's happening is that the language as it relates to a particular thing is changing. So one of the things that we call this product internally, Mike, is we're trying to give it a name, and the name we're currently calling it is Lift, and that stands for Lease Insights and Favorability Tracker. The reason I'm mentioning that is the T part of Lift, the tracker. So what we're planning on doing is looking at, hey, I've got a particular clause here. This clause might be 30 years ago when it was written, and it's got a favorability score of 2. We want to provide the ability to add new language to that clause and it scores it as a subsequent thing. So you'd have the original language, but then you'd have the updated language because of an amendment. So if you had 4 amendments over time that all addressed the exact same concern, you might have 4 or 5 different analyzed pieces of contract language that all relate to the same exact thing. So that's the tracker part. Because what for us, when we think about what does success mean for this, it's not just that we bring awareness to you, it's that it ultimately turns into more favorable language. So we're looking to track that by having multiple time-based changes to language with new scores. I'm not sure if that's what you were asking, and if it's not, I apologize. Please help me if I misunderstood.
All right, I don't see any other questions come through. I think that just means that you're an expert at this and everyone loves what you're saying. So there's no questions. We're just so clear. AI is just the most clear thing in the entire world. Um,
Yeah.
we
I'd love
appreciate.
that to be true. But I'm going to reiterate if there's anyone on here that would love to see it and was willing to jump on a 15-minute call with me, please respond to the thank you email that's coming out. Would love to show it to you. Like I said, we are heavily into a beta program now. We're looking to evolve it. It is providing value right now and even in its infancy, but we know where we want it to go, and you can help shape that. And we'd really appreciate you participating if you have the time and interest.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate that. So we have customers on this call, but we also have prospective customers. Even if you're a prospective customer and you do not use LeaseCake, you're not interested in switching to LeaseCake, but you want to try this just to see how it does. we can set you up with a trial account for, for a limited time. So even if you don't use LeaseCake, we can still do the lease scoring with you. If you are a customer, I'm going to send you a different email where I will give you instructions for how to access the beta, for how to use it, training instructions like that.
That's a great point. That's a great point, Jay. If you don't mind me, I want to dovetail off of that. You said something there really powerful, and I failed to say it. So thank you. This particular aspect of what LeaseCake is doing does not require you to be a lease administration customer of LeaseCake. So what that means is that if you're on a particular platform right now and you're thrilled and you're happy, but you'd still like to have the insights related to the clause information, the summarization, the risk analysis and scoring and the guidance and the ability to track that, we plan to offer that as a standalone service. That's what we're currently looking to do. So we wanted to have something that could be beneficial regardless of where you're storing your other information. So you don't need to think about this as I'm only interested, but I have to leave my current one. No, you don't have to. You could still use this as a supplement to what you're currently doing. So on a new lease, have you compared AI to human and what was the outcome? How long did it take? Each scenario was like minutes versus hours. This is Mike's question. So we have, or anybody, is Mike a customer? Do you know?
I'm not sure, Mike. Can you let us know? I'd have to look you up in our system.
And the reason I was asking is if you ever had the pleasure of working on a real estate team, you might have worked with Tara, and Tara's a rock star. So when we started doing this, Mike, what we did was I brought Tara. Oh, okay. So Tara is on our real estate team, and she's a 15, 20-year vet. She's been doing lease administration for a long time for lots of different organizations, and she helps run our internal real estate team. So she's kind of matrixed orged to me a bit on this one. God bless her, and which she's got to work with me. But what it means is that I get to run this stuff through her. And so I have her give me leases that she has manually done, and then she runs them through this to give me feedback. And through the early tests, we've been batting over 750, meaning that we're getting the same or more information than she was getting manually, and it's doing it in less than 3 minutes, where it typically would take them an hour, as an example. Now, is 750, 750 will get you in the Hall of Fame, but it's not good enough to be where we want to go. So what she's doing, she's helping us get all the other types of concerns dialed in so we get our batting average way up. But for the ones that are working really, really well, it does it in minutes, what normally takes people, an hour or two to pull all this information out. So from a time perspective, it's no question. AI does this stuff. It counts it in minutes, not hours. Good questions.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end it here so we can get everyone back to their busy schedules. I will follow up with you again. Look out for an email coming from LeaseCake. Probably early tomorrow will be when the email comes out, so keep an eye on that. If you have any questions in the meantime, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. There's a form on our website that you can fill out, and we will be in touch with you.